describe like when you this happened and then you were like, okay, I have insurance on something, and then when you got that rejection or letter, like how did that go down?
Well, what I did was, once I realized, and I didn't really appreciate it, I knew when we came in the house, it was like you walked and it pulled you to one side. So I called an engineer, and civil engineer, and he came and looked at the house, and he looked at the structural damage, and he said this was absolutely caused by wind. And if you look around, I mean, the house is tall and thin, and I'm on a corner, so I have, a lot of exposure to wind. All the other houses around here that don't have that kind of profile are fine, so it kind of argues in favor of wind versus flood, because no one else seemed to have that kind of damage from flooding. And so I submitted the engineer's report to my insurance company, and they told me they'd be back in touch with me shortly. And their response was, of course, to deny it and to send their own engineer. Their own engineer told me off the record that there was no question in his mind that it was wind damage, and that he should have a report back to my insurance company in about 4 weeks, 6 weeks at the most. So I kept calling to check on it, and finally after 6 weeks, they said they had the report, but they wouldn't tell me what was in the report, and they said they had to send it back for clarification. It took them about 3 months after that before they actually sent me the official report from their engineer, and their engineer's report said it was caused by flooding. Even though their own engineer told me that he didn't think that it could possibly be flooding, it had to be wind.
So how does that happen then? I mean, if you have one person saying it's clearly, and then you get one from them.
Well, the only recourse you have is to take them to court and fight it. And that's costly and difficult, and I was willing to do that. But it turned out that my lawyer looked at the damage scope that they had given me, and sent over some contractor consultants to look at the house and determined that they had underpaid me for all the other damage anyway, and that when it was all said and done, I was over the limit. So it was a way for them to avoid having the foundation issue become a dispute that would have to be settled in court. And but it still leaves me without any payment for it. And the last word, according to them, is that it was flood damage, and that's where it was left.
But that's not what they're right.
There have been a lot of reports, and it's been well publicized, that insurance companies have had engineering firms change their engineering reports when they've had engineering reports that attribute the damage to houses to wind. They send them back and have them change it to flood, and that's been documented in Louisiana and in Mississippi. And I think that it's absolutely what happened to mine, because I don't understand how the engineer would have the report back to State Farm in the amount of time that he said it would take, and they would never let me see it, and then it would take 3 months to get clarification, and all of a sudden, now it's wind. And there were a lot of things in the report that were very, very questionable in terms of how they justified it. So that's the end of that.